Okay, so today on the channel we're just going to be talking a little bit about the Rega 24 volt motors, which are currently in use on a lot of the Rega planar turntables. Now, a lot of people will go out and buy their Rega planar deck. They might have it for a year or so, depending on usage, and find that there's a problem where they think the motor's got a little bit more noisy and there's a bit of vibration as well. Now, this is normally because at the bottom of the decks there is something called a thrust bearing plate, which is just in here. Now, this is a thrust bearing plate which I use. The Rega ones are literally a horrible piece of plastic which has been put on there with Loctite before it leaves the factory. Now, on the other side of the plate, which is adjoined to this, Rega put some grease. Basically, the actual spindle of the motor then spins round, and of course it gets lubricated by this grease. And then over a period of time this grease obviously dries out, and then you get your problems. Now, quite simple to rectify really, and that is you need a flat blade screwdriver, ping off this plate, which is normally held on by a little bit of glue, and you can wipe off any old grease and simply put some more molybdenum grease on there, and a little bit of super glue normally needed just to hold it in place. Now, as you can see, I've chosen to use something by a company called SRM Tech. They do a thrust bearing kit for the Rega planars, and basically what this kit does is on the inside of this actual thrust bearing kit there is a ball bearing, and inside this ball bearing, and with all the grease which they also supply, you've got an Allen key here which adjusts the ball bearing so that it rides up inside. So the ball bearing rides up inside here, and what it does is it then pushes up the shaft of the motor, this drive shaft here, and pushes up the drive shaft until it's at a height where it just rides just very, very sweetly inside the motor. You'll know when you find it, because you'll find that there's not so much up and down play in the motor, and it just runs much more smoothly and a lot more quietly. Now, I've got a tiny little bit of molybdenum grease just in the top here as well, just as it spins, just to keep it quiet as well. Other people have suggested that you put a drop of light sewing machine oil down the shaft. Quite honestly, I wouldn't recommend that. You've got electric components running around in that motor, and you really don't want to have oil running down on them. So something like this from SRM Tech, there may be other companies that make them out there, is ideal. The motor will run much smoother. The trouble with this motor usually is that, as you'll know if you've had a good look at your turntable, is that it's held in place on the underside of the turntable plinth by a double-sided pad, sticky pad, to keep it in place. Now, any vibration from that motor will travel up through the plinth and into the lid, especially if you keep the lid on while you're playing. Over a period of time, when this grease in the motor dries out, you'll find that vibration will travel along there which used to absolutely bug the life out of me when it was quiet or on a quiet piece of music. So obviously that wasn't ideal, and I wanted a way to rectify that. My way was obviously quite radical. I designed this isolation platform so that the actual motor unit stands completely alone from the plinth, so it's not attached at all. It's on a heavyweight lump of stainless steel, and there's double-sided industrial strength sticky pads on there as well to keep it in situ on my hi-fi rack, which happens to be sort of tempered glass, and it keeps it in place. I mean, it's sticky as shit basically, this pad, so it won't move at all, and it's got some real weight to it. Also, I have decided to remove the circuit board from, which is normally again located underneath the plinth. So I removed that completely, and I kept the top case and just added an underside of it and put some feet on it. It's only crude, but it keeps it completely separate and away from the actual turntable plinth itself, so there's no vibration at all. So this is a great thing. If I just have a little move over here, you'll be able to see one in operation here. That's actually running on the underside of my turntable at the moment. So, and that is absolutely as quiet as a mouse. Now, the problems that Regas suffer with an awful lot is that their cartridges aren't very well shielded. So you might find that you get a problem where the cartridge, as soon as it becomes nearer to the center spindle of the turntable, that you get an electric field, a magnetic field generated because it's in the close proximity to this motor, and then you start getting hum, which is obviously an issue. So if you can possibly move this motor away like I have, I mean, it's not a massive distance away, but it is further away than it would be normally. And also, a good thing to do, if you possibly can, is to have the bottom end at least of your arm on your Rega rewired, so that you've got a separate earthing cable to it. In this way, with a separate earthing cable, you're not relying on the earth that runs through the phono plugs, and you will find it will make so much difference, and the results will be brilliant. Rega have a real tendency to not change the blueprint design for their turntables with regards keeping the phono plugs the same with no separate earth, which is, in my mind, absolutely crazy. So now I've basically got motors which can be moved from one deck to another, because all the electrics and the motors are all together. So I could move this essentially over to another deck, another Rega deck, and just put it straight in there. Well, provided that is I could get the sticky tape off the bottom, which is a major issue, but you don't have to use the tape. I mean, this is a heavyweight lump that I've got here, so it does stand still, but it's just to give it added support and sticking down. Also, when you're using the isolation platform, it also means that should drive belts get slightly worn, all I need to do is simply just get the isolation platform and just move it over this way slightly, and in which case it takes the slack out of any worn drive belt, which means I don't have to keep buying drive belts. Lots of people do also comment with their Regas that on startup they get a noise from it, from the motor. Now, this is very common. It's always suggested that when you start your turntable up, that you spin the platter first, which is absolutely correct. Spin the platter and then press the start button. That is the way to work with these motors. You'll find that the noise is caused by, obviously, by the torque from the motor going through the drive belt. Now, you can alleviate this a great deal, if not completely, by replacing the standard pulley on here, and you can get double pulleys or even a triple pulley. So you can run 2 or 3 drive belts. Now, the benefit of doing this is that if you've got 2 drive belts, it copes with the amount of torque which is coming from the motor, and it dissipates the torque, and you'll find that on startup, even though you still have to spin the platter, you won't get that horrible graunchy noise when it starts. So that'll alleviate that, completely. If you're worried about this startup noise, it is something that it is a common thing, but you must always spin the platter to start. So basically, the biggest issues with the Regas are the earthing issue and keeping the motor away from the centre spindle if you possibly can. Obviously, a lot of other companies have the motors further away. A lot of the project turntables, they isolate the motor completely, like on some of the RPMs, like the Genies, the Genie 1s, Genie 2s. For a cheap turntable, the motors are kept well away and isolated from the centre spindle and from the rest of the turntable. And even back in the 1980s, you've got turntables like the Revolver Rebel, which, same as the Project, they use a long drive belt which doesn't drive a sub platter, but actually drives the main platter itself. So you've got a long drive belt turning the whole platter round, and the motor, the benefit of this being that the motor's a much greater distance away from the centre spindle, so you don't get the magnetic fields which are generated, and therefore it doesn't interfere with the cartridges which you might be using on your turntable arm. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful to you. If you've got any comments or you would like to get in touch, please do. I'd be more than welcome. Leave your comments for me to have a look at, and again, we'll probably cover some more Rega problems and issues in future. Until then, I hope this has been helpful. Thanks ever so much for watching.